Why do we have 1.2 million Arabs living in Israel proper? In fact, I challenge anyone. You can go to Tel Aviv, and you can dress in Muslim garb, and you can pray towards Mecca. Nobody will touch you. But would anybody here want to go to Ramallah and put a kippah on his skull cap? And stand on a bus stop? So far, nobody accepted that challenge. What's going on here? Critical thinking. I began to look at Joseph's tomb. Joseph's tomb was desecrated. Not by one person, but by a community in Nablus. You can see, all the men standing there, burning it. This is a synagogue where Joseph was buried. The biblical Joseph. Now, you might be atheist and that's not important to you, but excuse me. It's important to somebody. Do you want to respect that importance to somebody else? And then you can see the smoke and billows of smoke. I said, well, wait a minute. What does that have to do with occupation? After all, we're supposed to be fighting the Israelis. Why are we burning synagogues? Not one synagogue in the entire Palestinian areas were spared. Even where the place where Jesus was born. Of course, it's not important to you. The birthplace of Jesus, Muhammad Abayat, and the terror gang took it over, hijacked it, and took all the monks hostage. And finally they were released. All the terrorists that hijacked the birthplace of Jesus are free. They are in Europe now living by a special deal. They're all released. Israel does everything to try to release these terrorists. Now think about it. What if the hijacking was the Vatican? Which was more important to Christians? The Vatican or the Nativity Church where the Lord was born? The Pope or Jesus? Of course, even Catholics will say Jesus. Well, how come there's no peep from anybody? Not from the Catholics or the evangelicals or the Protestants or anybody. Nobody cared. Not even from the atheists, secularists, the loving society of America. Nobody cared. What if the hijacking was in Mecca? If a Jew walks on the Dome of the Rock, the whole world goes ballistic. Now assume the following. Assume the Jews became maniacal one day and decided to say, you know what? Muslims, we agree with you. Abraham was our father and Abraham also was your father. Abraham built Al-Kaaba. Jews don't believe Abraham built Al-Kaaba, but let's assume they all agree. Abraham built the Kaaba. Since Abraham was our father, we have a right to access the Kaaba in Mecca. And let's do something a little different here. Let us take the black tarp and put a blue tarp and put Hebrew calligraphy all around it. And let's go a little further. Let us not allow any Muslim to come to the pilgrimage from now on. This is a Jewish holy place now. What would you think the reaction would be at this university? You see where I'm going here? It doesn't matter. When in fact, it's the Christian persecution that needs to be addressed. But the only thing that we want to address in the university is Islamic persecution. That the Muslims are being persecuted. What about the Christians? What about the Nubians? Armenians? Syrians? Chaldeans? Persecution galore all throughout the Middle East. In fact, the plight of the Christians in the Middle East is something unparalleled in history. Happens right now. Christians are living by the droves from the Middle Eastern countries. Go to Chile, to America, to South America, to wherever. Leaving. Bethlehem, the village I lived in, was 80% Christian. Now it's 80% Muslim. What happened? The beauty of any system is the treatment of their minorities. That's the beauty of any system. Any system is measured by how they treat the minority view, not the majority view. It happens to be now that the minority view is the Christian view. How are they treated in America? Let's see. Pat Robertson and John Hague are terrorists now. If they say anything, they're the terrorists. They're the bad guys. Let's see. Christians in America. Let's talk about Christian phobia. Christians in America, let's see. They want to usher in Armageddon. Let's talk frankly. We know what you say. We know what the media says. We know what the other side say. Christian, they want to, especially evangelicals, those are the worst kind, the Zionist Christian Zionists, you know. They want to usher in Armageddon so Jesus can come and convert the whole world to Christianity. Isn't that what you hear? I hear it all the time. Let me ask a question here. If we wanted to usher Armageddon, let's see, Armageddon in Christian theology, before it happens, there must be an establishment of Israel, right? Israel has to be in their homeland. The one main factor that caused Israel to establish a homeland was the persecution of Jews. The Holocaust really gave birth to the state of Israel. Holocaust not only in Germany, not only in Poland, but also in the Muslim world. People forget that. People forget that Adolf Hitler, 8 divisions out of the Nazi war machine, 2 of them were Muslim fundamentalists. The Bosnian and the Albanian SS. They forgot about all this. That stuff is not even mentioned anywhere. 2 divisions out of the Nazi war machine was Muslim fundamentalists. So, I guess it was Pat Robertson who collaborated with Adolf Hitler to cause the persecution, to cause the establishment of Israel, so we can usher Armageddon and Jesus comes. Now, how absurd is that? However, on the other side, when Ahmadinejad speaks in front of the United Nations, you know, what does he say? You know, he prays for the ushering of the Mahdi. Well, what about the Mahdi? Well, what about what I learned all my life? لا تقوم الساعة حتى تغلب طائفة من المسلمين طائفة من اليهود قيل أين يا رسول الله قال في بيت المقدس وأكناف بيت المقدس. I speak it verbatim, word for word. No vowel problems here. Exactly the same way we memorized it. And exactly as Muslims memorized it in my country. The day of judgment shall not come to pass until the tribes of Israel, until the tribes of Islam attack and defeat the tribes of Israel in Jerusalem and the surrounding nations. And then the trees and the stones will cry out, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come, O Muslim. Come, O servant of Allah. Come and kill him. Wait a minute here. Let's assume we're both wrong. Let's assume the Christians are wrong and the atheists are right. Let's take all scenarios. Is there any atheists here? I'm sure there's atheists in every crowd. The atheist says you both are wrong. Well, there's one problem here. If the Christians are wrong, there's no harm done. They're waiting for some Jesus to come from the clouds. If he doesn't show up in the clouds, nothing's going to happen. However, this ushering of the Mahdi thing seems to be a very big problem for me. Because once the Mahdi is elected and they're talking about it, Khilafah. Khilafah. What is Khilafah? A Khalifa is the vicar of Muhammad. The Khilafah or the Caliphate was basically disbanded in 1924. 1924. The West basically eliminated the Caliphate. And that was a bruise for the Islamic world because the Caliph to the Muslim world is like the Pope to the Catholics. The Catholics consider the Pope as vicar of Christ. The Muslims consider the Khalifa as the vicar of Muhammad, basically. The representation of Islam on earth. That's a big problem for the Muslims. But in 1928, 40 years later, the apparatus to re-establishing the Khilafah already began, the Muslim Brotherhood. After that, the Wahhabis and everything else. In 1928, you see, because the idea is that terrorism and radical Islam is caused by occupation and the Western imperialists and all these things. Well, what happened in 1928? There was no occupation of Palestine. Why did Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was my grandfather's friend, was a regular guest at my grandfather's house. Hajj Amin al-Husseini collaborated with Adolf Hitler. You can see the photo on the eve of the final solution to destroy the Jews. Why did he commit the Hebron massacre, in which all the Jews of Hebron were killed, massacred? Nobody talks about the Hebron massacre. Nobody talks about Damour massacre in Lebanon. Mention Jenin, mention Deir Yassin, and the Islamists think they don't get enough coverage. The West is not fair with their media coverage. The media covers all these things.